he's going to get in. Score!
On the previous play, we have a hooking minor to Ottawa and an embellishment minor to Montreal. Therefore, there is no goal.
Oh my goodness.
One of the most controversial things that can occur in a game is hands down a missed call against the home team. The players are pissed, the coach is screaming, the fans, God, the fans are relentlessly booing the refs. But it's also important to remember that hockey is the most fast-paced professional sport in the world. I mean, it is played on goddamn ice. Which is why it is also important to consider refs, officials, they can easily miss things, especially on ice level, where the game is going a lot faster than it is in the stands or on TV. Yet, somehow this happens.
Handed by me, and we'll hold on to that.
What do we got? What do we got?
There is no goal on the play. The whistle is blown to kill the play.
Wow.
Because in November of 2009, Brad May, after having 1 assist, 0 goals in 40 games that season, would release a backhand around the hash marks, which would go in.
Oh my goodness, look at this. There it is. Right.
And after celebration or confusion would ensue, that goal would be waved off. But, I mean, that's okay. The puck is clearly in the net, as we would see it from several angles during the broadcast. And I mean, and it's why we have Toronto to look at these questionable goals. Right, guys? Right? Well, I kid you not. The refs would call this a non-goal. And get this, there was intent to blow the whistle. I repeat, intent to blow the whistle. I don't get this, then why did you not just blow the whistle? And after a video review, the ref would cite what has to be one of the dumbest NHL rules in history, Rule 31.2, disputes. Specifically, this part. Quote, as there is a human factor involved in blowing the whistle to stop play, the referee may deem the play to be stopped slightly prior to the whistle actually being blown. The fact that the puck may come loose or cross the goal line prior to the sound of the whistle has no bearing if the referee has ruled that play had been stopped prior to this happening, which is absurd, and I can't believe this still exists in today's game. As intent to blow the whistle is so arbitrary, so subjective that it could be abused, as Brad May would end his illustrious career with what would have been his second goal in the past 98 games, and first and only goal with the Detroit Red Wings, with one of the worst missed calls the game has ever seen, as even Mike Murphy, who was the senior vice president of hockey operations, would admit this was a mistake, stating too much video review had occurred, which honestly makes this even more confusing because the goal was clearly in, so why even bring an outside argument that video review is bad for the game? But Brad May's goal would have tied the game 2-2 late in the third, but instead, Detroit would end up losing the game 3-1 after an empty net goal. Which brings us to another Detroit Red Wing, Thomas Holmstrom. Because if you watch Detroit games back in the late 90s and early 2000s, my man scored his goals and made his money from one trick: net front presence. Holmstrom was a pioneer and perfected this strategy, as he would plant himself in front of the net and was literally impossible to move, which of course would frustrate the shit out of teams, especially the goalies, and teams would complain so much that Holmstrom started to develop a reputation, which would cause disallowed goals like this to happen.
That is about
And he's
as brutal.
outside the crease.
That is as brutal as it gets.
And this,
The shot scores! Henrik Zetterberger saying no goal because Thomas Holmstrom's going to go to the box for interfering with Michael Telquist.
horrendous. I mean, it is so bad that there is literally a 14-minute montage of horrendous disallowed goals from Holmstrom's net front presence. 14 minutes, and there's no way that this is even all of them. And what's even more absurd, this is what Holmstrom was wearing back in those net front battle days. This man probably received at least 20 cross checks a night against his back with next to no protection. But hey, at least it was just regular season games without, serious implications. Even with 14 minutes of disallowed goals, Holmstrom would still go on to win 4 Stanley Cups with the Wings. So what about bad calls that had serious implications? Like perhaps missing the playoffs, or even worse, getting eliminated from the playoffs. Because after Sean Horkoff would clearly win a face-off on his second swipe, the puck would go to the net, Stahl would get it to the net, and Hemsky would bury the rebound. Except, let's take a second look.
Are going to be furious with this. This is a horrible call from Mick Magoo. Twice tonight, the Oilers have taken by far the short end of the stick.
Okay, so Sean Horkoff clearly uses his stick blade to win the draw. Yet, it was called a hand pass, which would lead to the Oilers losing the game, and could have, and I kid you not, led Edmonton to missing the playoffs, as they were right on the bubble in the 8th seed, only 3 points ahead of Vancouver in the final standings. Not to mention this was the same season where the Oilers would go all the way to the finals, meaning this horrific call could have single-handedly ended the Oilers season, and they would not have gone on that historic 06 Cup run, led by Chris Pronger. And this is just a prime example on how a missed call can have a serious impact, much greater than just losing a single game. And speaking of the 06 playoffs and franchise-altering missed calls, back in the early 2000s, Saku Koivu was the heart and soul of the Montreal Canadiens. Not only was he a great player, a great leader, but this man battled so hard, he wouldn't even let cancer stop his NHL career. Because in round 1 versus the Carolina Hurricanes, Montreal would take a very impressive 2-0 lead over the Canes in Carolina. Super impressive. However, in Game 3, Koivu would take a high stick directly to the eye from Justin Williams. A high stick that resulted in Koivu nearly losing one of his eyes, and an injury that would end his entire season on the spot. Not to mention the officials would miss this high stick. So not only did Montreal lose their captain and heart and soul of the team, not only did the refs miss the high stick that should have given them a 4-minute power play late in the third, but Carolina would go on to win that same game in overtime, and go on to winning the next 4 games in a row, as they would eliminate the Canadiens and go on to beat the Edmonton Oilers to win the Stanley Cup. In a series where the Canadiens were rolling them up 2-0, they would lose from a horrible missed call, and history would change forever. But this may not even be as bad as the 1993 Conference Finals, as the Toronto Maple Leafs led by Dougie Gilmour, Wendell Clark, Felix Potvin would match up against the great one, Wayne Gretzky, and the LA Kings. And after a grueling series, Toronto would shockingly take a 3-2 series lead, with Doug Gilmour having a crazy playoff performance with 35 points in 21 games. And during Game 6, the game would go to overtime, all tied up at 4 goals apiece. And then, it would happen.
The shot, that's blocked, and it hurt Gilmour. He stopped the shot, it hurt him, he fell.
Wayne Gretzky would high stick Doug Gilmour right across the chin, busting it open as he would fall to the ice holding his face. So in a scenario where Toronto should have went on an OT power play, where they would have had a great chance to eliminate the Kings, which would have led on to a historic finals versus the Montreal Canadiens, the Wayne Gretzky high stick would go unnoticed, and I kid you not, just moments after, Gretzky, who should have been in the penalty box, would score the game winner, also giving us this iconic goal celebration. And of course, in a Wayne fashion, Gretzky would go on to lighting up the Leafs the next game and bring them to the Cup Finals. And as it stands, the game is in a major dilemma, because with all this new game-changing technology, theoretically, it is possible to make sure the right call occurs in every single game, regardless on whether the officials make the right call or not. Let's even take a look at the infamous Matt Duchene offside, as this horrendous missed call served as the spearhead play that led to the creation of the coach's review. Even look at a recent play that led to Austin Matthews being suspended for 2 games, as Matthews would be cross-checked several times by Dahlin. And also keep in mind that Austin Matthews is 6'3", like 210, therefore it would require some force to knock him down. So at what point does the ref need to take the blame for not making a cross-checking call against Dahlin so it doesn't boil over, leading to suspension? Or perhaps at what point do we just allow these plays to happen and allow the players themselves to police the game? Because, to be honest, this play right here is very common. Yet, we have seen constant inconsistencies from the officials and league on what is allowed and what is not allowed. Like seriously, the only thing consistent is how inconsistent they are, and when someone needs to step in to prevent these plays from occurring. Like, let's not forget, the NHL literally this season told players that cross-checking was under the radar. So much so that Alex Ovechkin, among many other players, were getting some of the softest cross-check penalties in history. Like, this is in the same season, yet this isn't a penalty? And to be honest, the answer is very unclear, and I really hope we see more consistency going into the future.